In today's episode of the Pathfinder Presents podcast, I have an interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Colleen Ruggiero, and she's heading over as the director of CX at Firstbase. And Firstbase is a very interesting company. I mean, more and more of you guys are obviously working remote or working or joining remote companies. And essentially, what Firstbase is doing, they're making the remote work superior, incredible, great for people out there that are working from their houses. So basically, they allow you to set up, manage, and retrieve all the physical equipment that remote workers need and make it much easier to manage the whole process. Pathfinder is a remote company. A lot of you guys are listening are from a remote company, so for sure we know the pain on that. So loving to learn more about Firstbase today. So Colleen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So maybe for the people who haven't heard too much yet about Firstbase, or just basically maybe have heard it but don't fully grasp yet what you guys are doing, maybe give us a 360 overview. What is Firstbase all about?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, you gave a really great description of what our mission is and how we intend to operate. But Firstbase really that we intend to help companies make remote work easier for them to manage. We have a platform and a system of tools and an amazing team that helps get things to people's homes so that they can work remotely for companies. It kind of came out of the current world that we're in, and as a result of a lot of companies not wanting to have to figure it out themselves, but also wanting to hire a really diverse group of individuals. And so it's been really cool working for Firstbase over the last 9 months and seeing how we can impact other companies to do the same thing, as you can tell in my home.
Very cool. So what would you say, what types of organizations sort of benefit most from Firstbase? Do they need to have a certain sort of amount of employees for this making sense? Is it even for smaller teams that hire their first 10 remote workers? Is it only for certain, enterprise levels? Maybe tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think we tend to head in the mid-market to enterprise range. We don't do, a 2-person company. We don't really focus there, but we tend to stick to medium to large businesses. A lot of tech companies and a lot of companies that understand what it is and also want to embrace that same culture. So that's really where we focus.
Very cool. Now, who would you say is typically the champion within those organizations? Like, who's saying does it come from the sort of the HR team? Does the C-suite say we need to streamline that process? We're sending machines everywhere, and they I don't know, now they're broken and we don't know what to do. So who's the champion typically?
It's usually you hit the nail on the head. It's usually the HR or IT teams. It's basically the folks who have usually had to figure out to do this themselves and would love to partner with the company to help make their lives easier and make the company happier. Because I think not only what we do is have them as the champion, but we then make employee experience a lot better. And so that's kind of that IT HR bridge.
And how do these folks learn about Firstbase, right? Like, what's their journey like? Or in other words, what are the client acquisition channels that you guys would leverage?
I think and the CEO might not love me saying this, but he has a very vocal presence on social media. And so if you go and see Chris Hurd on Twitter, he talks a lot about remote work, and he's on LinkedIn as well. And he talks a lot about the overall strategy of remote work and why companies need to embrace it and why pushing people back to office just doesn't make a ton of sense now. And so I think that's a lot of how we've gotten this sort of like organic inbound, and it's allowed us to lean into that messaging and like have him be this like social media influence to make those business decisions. So that's mostly how people find us, is through those sort of comms that go out.
And what role do you then see for the website? Like, what role does the website play in your customers' journey of getting to know you guys and getting started? How do you think about that?
Well, I think we're reaching a point where it's not as much of determining, not as much like convincing people that remote work makes sense. And I think it's now generally understood that is the way that needs to operate, or at least very much hybrid. And so the website is now in the has been revamped and also is working on developing a higher level of information. It's like, we all get it. Whatever, a lot of companies are working from home. We don't need to convince you anymore. And so now this is just more of like, here are all the benefits that we can provide to make your life easier. And so it's kind of the next generation of our strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I could even say the headline on your website, or the title on your website, actually, speaks exactly to that. It's not about that you have to do it, just how do you actually make it good? How do you make it running smoothly? And that makes a lot of sense. Very cool. Now, you work in CX. Maybe tell us a little bit about the role of CX. Like, what does CX mean and entail at Firstbase? Because what we've noticed in the interviews is it actually can have sort of different focal and focus areas. Like, how would you define it for Firstbase?
Yeah. That's a great question. So the customer experience team that I'm responsible for, first and foremost, is responsible for working with our end users. And so, and I'm so sorry if my Slack is noisy. Let me quit that out.
We cannot even hear it in the recording.
You can hear it? Oh, okay. And so, yeah, so our CX team is responsible for, first and foremost, working with our end users to make sure that they have a positive experience with not only our platform, but with the physical items that they're receiving. And so it's a mix of, answering questions about how to navigate the platform, how to, place orders. It's a little unnerving. Just as an aside, our end users sometimes are confused of, I can just get a desk. I can place an order and get a computer, and just making sure that they understand how those things work, and then supporting them through that full life cycle of receiving those items, setting up their remote workspace, and then for better or for worse, retrieving those things if they ever choose to leave the company, or that they are let go for whatever reason. And so that's a lot of the fundamentals of what the team does. And then what I would say makes it a bit different from just customer support is that we take so much of what we see and what we experience and what we feel back to our teams in order to evangelize customer feedback, customer sentiment, voice of the customer, and then help drive enhancements, new products to be added as selectable within our platform, improvements on how the processes work. It's pretty interesting because our model, while remote, has a very physical component of warehouses and deliveries and things coming to you, and not just like a SaaS tool.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, what is interesting is the CX role in some companies actually has more touch points with the website, specifically when it comes to support. In other cases, it's less. Like, what touch points does CX have with the actual website and buying journey experiences that happen before people get into the product?
We don't have a ton of touch points. And sorry, I'm out of here. We don't have a ton of touch points with the website because we don't really need to be honest. We basically have been able to build a platform that's self-service. It's kind of a shop in a sense where you can go in and say I'm an HR manager and I want to implement we call them packages. So basically you set up this marketplace in which you can then say, okay, everyone on sales has all of these different options to choose from, and then they get set up with those things, and then we handle the rest of it. And so they just select those items. Our Rockstar operations team then gets the stuff to them, and CX is kind of the last piece of the puzzle, just to make sure that they're getting everything that they need.
Cool. Now that gives us definitely a great overview of what CX is all about within Firstbase. I would love to learn a little bit more about your journey as a customer experience professional. At first, what I'm interested about is there's so much content on CX out there, right? Where do you personally like to educate yourself? Like, what is go-to resources with with all the noise out there on sort of the hot topic of CX?
I nerd out on this stuff, and it was part of why I wanted to do this podcast and talk about it, because I do really much enjoy the topic. And so I guess to your first question about my journey, and so I actually didn't intend to work in this industry. I wanted to work in media and communications, and started out in advertising and marketing, actually. And over time, this world of tech kind of popped up, and I had someone say, you have to jump on board, you have to join this company. I worked for a couple of companies and building out teams and learning to do support myself in many ways. And it just became really enjoyable to not only provide great experiences, but find really wonderful people to work with and build really great teams. And so that is kind of what inspires me to keep doing this. And I think to the second point of like, where do I focus? It's a lot of team development. It's a lot of building out teams of like really smart people with diverse backgrounds that feel passionate about what it is we're doing. It's one of the things I like about this role is like, it's not like sales where you have to be really good at selling. You just have to be a kind person. And so you can find people with all sorts of different backgrounds who have, different experiences that allow them to bring that to the table more often than other roles I've seen. And so it's like, I like to find people with diverse backgrounds, and that's where I really focus. It's like building company culture, because happy employees then results in happy customers. It's kind of a residual effect of it all.
Mm-hmm. I have some rapid fire questions to wrap it up for today as we're moving towards the end of the interview. Are you ready for those?
Yeah. What
is the last book you read or the last podcast you listened to?
Last podcast I listened to was, this is embarrassing. It's called Will You Accept This Rose? It's a Bachelor podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with the show. It's a Bachelor podcast. Yeah.
The show. Yes, I've definitely heard about the show.
Yeah, it's a podcast about the show.
Okay, very cool.
Super embarrassing.
Well, good. What is one single thing that your company is focused on most at the moment?
I think we're focused on doing more with less. It's just, that we want to stay steady with our business model and our structure, and then just get more efficient.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, right? So you mentioned everything is possible. You've got a magic wand. What's the one thing you would fix for your role in CX?
Better content development. It's like how we can automate repetitive asks, right? Like not having to answer the same question multiple times and making it really easy to do so.
Very cool. For the very last question, I would like to do a little bit of time travel, and let's go back to the maybe even let's go back to new paths, right? So you're heading out of formal education into the world of business and growth. What's the one advice you would give yourself for your journey?
I would tell myself not to take things too seriously. I think what remote work has, I moved into a role that had become remote during this this period of time, and it taught me about a lot of things that gave me context and visibility and made things feel a lot of clarity. And so at the same time as COVID happened, I also had a daughter. And so it was just a lot of like, there are so many more important things. And so it's great to like build great teams and do great things, but like, it's great to work from home and be able to watch your daughter or, your child and see those moments. And it's what resonated with me to join the company.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. I really appreciate, Colleen, you taking a bit of time with us today to be a guest on the Pathfind Presents. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Firstbase, what's the one thing they should remember?
They should remember that like I just said, it's really great to work from home. And so, find, if that resonates with you, find a company that will allow you to do that and live your life. Work is not everything, but it's something that helps you do the other things that you really enjoy.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Pathfind Presents.